Bank teller tosses, black CEO's ID minutes. Later, a $7B merger vanishes overnight. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's get back to the story. The morning light spilled cold across the marble floor of Hamilton First Bank. Everything gleamed glass chrome silence. Then came the sentence that shattered it. "We don't serve your type here." The words didn't echo, they struck. Danielle Ross froze halfway between the counter and the chair. Her ID card slid from her fingers, landing face down with a dull tap. For a moment, all you could hear was the hum of the air vents and the quiet shuffle of judgment. Behind the desk, the teller, a blonde woman in a forest green suit, didn't flinch. Her manicured finger pointed toward the door firm and practiced as if this was a routine expulsion. 3 employees on the left turned to watch, whispering between polite smiles that hid their discomfort. One crossed her legs, another smirked. The room had chosen its side. Danielle bent down slowly, picking up her ID. The reflection of the teller's shoes flashed in the polished floor beneath her. She straightened eyes, calm voice even. That was unnecessary. The teller gave a clipped laugh. "Bank policy," she said. "We verify high-risk clients before wasting our time." A pause stretched like wire. Somewhere behind a printer clicked the sound, small but cruelly loud. Danielle's hand tightened around her ID, yet her tone never changed. High risk. For what existing? The teller didn't answer. She leaned back, arms folded, lips twisting into something close to satisfaction. 2 clients seated near the window exchanged glances, the kind that said, "You should know your place." Danielle stood still. No raised voice, no scene, just presence. The kind that unsettled the air itself. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Danielle. The camera closes in. The teller's nameplate reads C. Newhart, Senior Associate. Her expression hardens as Danielle quietly lays the ID on the counter again. "Run it properly," Danielle says. "You might learn who you just dismissed." Newhart exhales through her nose, unimpressed. "Security's on standby," she mutters, pressing the intercom. Across the lobby, the security guard straightens, unsure yet ready. Danielle doesn't move. Her orange dress glows against the sterile white of the room, soft color in a hard place. The other employees keep pretending to work, fingers typing nonsense into screens, stealing glances that slice the silence. The tension is no longer invisible. It's physical, thick humming between 2 women, one with borrowed authority, one with real power hidden behind patience. Then the teller sneers loud enough for the entire room. "You people always try this." Danielle's eyes narrow, not in anger but recognition. She's heard that tone before. Years ago, a store clerk, a landlord, a banker, all the same melody of contempt. This time she doesn't walk away. The shot lingers on her face, composed, unreadable. The light catches the edge of her ID card, revealing the embossed seal of Ross Capital Holdings. No one notices it yet, but the audience knows justice is already loading. For a moment, no one breathed. The only sound was the slow tick of the wall clock, polite, merciless. Danielle stayed still, her ID resting on the counter like evidence in a trial. Across from her teller, Newhart glanced toward the manager's office, searching for backup she didn't yet need but wanted to flaunt. "Security," she said quietly into the intercom. "We might have a situation." The words "a situation" drifted through the air like smoke, vague enough to sound official, sharp enough to wound. Near the waiting chairs, 3 employees looked up. One of them, a young woman in a gray blazer, maybe 23, hesitated, glancing between Danielle and the teller. Her badge read Leah Tran, intern. Leah had seen that name before. Ross. In the executive file marked confidential, pending acquisition. Her pulse quickened. She knew who this woman was. Newhart slammed a drawer for emphasis. "You can leave now," she said, raising her voice. "Or security will escort you." Danielle didn't blink. "Do it," she said softly. "Let's all find out who gets escorted first." The teller's jaw tightened. Her smile thinned, the kind of smile used to hide fear. Leah swallowed hard, then stood. The sound of her chair scraping the floor cut through the tension like a siren. "Mr. Newhart," she said, her voice trembling, but clear. "She's verified. I saw her profile this morning." The room froze. Newhart turned slowly, her tone dripping with disbelief. Excuse me, she's in the executive system, Leah continued, under Ross Capital Holdings. I checked the merger file. A few heads turned. Even the guard near the door hesitated. The teller's eyes narrowed. That's impossible. You must have read it wrong. Leah shook her head. I didn't. A beat of silence followed thin electric. Danielle didn't interrupt. She simply watched her presence grounding the chaos like gravity itself. Someone in the waiting area whispered, "What's happening?" Another murmured, "She looks calm, too calm." Newhart snapped back, her voice sharp. Enough. Sit down, Leah. You don't speak on client matters. But Leah didn't move. She straightened her spine, voice steadier now. This isn't a client matter, she said. It's a human one. The teller's hand hovered over the intercom again. Last warning, she hissed. Danielle exhaled slowly, almost like a sigh. The camera closes in her expression, unreadable, her eyes reflecting the sterile fluorescent lights above. Then she speaks quiet but cutting. You're right about one thing. This is a situation, just not the kind you can control. The teller scoffed, trying to recover dominance. Are you threatening me? No, Danielle said, lifting her phone. I don't make threats, I make calls. She tapped once. Across the room, the digital clock flickered. The bank's internal system chimed faint metallic out of place. Leah looked toward her terminal. Something was happening. Her monitor blinked twice, then displayed a message in bold, Merger Access Active Review Executive Override by D. Ross. The air shifted. Quiet gasps. The guard took one small step back. Newhart blinked, color draining from her face. Danielle turned, voice low but razor sharp. Now, Miss Newhart, would you like to continue this conversation as a teller or as a witness? The shot holds. Silence fills the marble room, thick as judgment. No music, no applause. Just the sound of power arriving quietly right on time. The stillness after Danielle's last line wasn't peace, it was pressure. The kind that bends glass before it shatters. Every eye in the lobby was on her now. The woman they'd dismissed 30 seconds ago had just made the entire network tremble. The teller's monitor flickered again, turning blue for a heartbeat before restoring the login screen. Newhart blinked fast, pretending to stay composed. Her tone cracked anyway. This is some kind of trick. Danielle didn't move. She didn't even look at her. She just adjusted the cuff of her sleeve. Her phone still in hand, its black screen reflecting the fluorescent ceiling like a blade of light. From the far end of the lobby, the manager finally emerged, mid-50 seconds, stiff suit, silver tie clip gleaming like authority. His badge read Mr. Keene, branch manager. He scanned the room, jaw tight. What's going on here? Newhart exhaled in relief. Sir, this woman is impersonating a high-value client. She triggered some system alert. I triggered the alert. Danielle cut in calm as water. Keene frowned. And you are? She smiled, but only slightly. Someone who's been very patient. He took a slow step closer, the way people approach something they don't fully understand. Ma'am, if this is a misunderstanding, we can resolve it quietly. But you need to step aside while we verify. You already did, Danielle replied. Your intern confirmed it. He looked at Leah, who stood frozen, hands clasped tightly in front of her. Leah, he said, step back, please. Sir, I saw her name in the acquisition file, Leah stammered. Ross Capital Holdings. It's right therein. That's confidential information, Keene snapped. You shouldn't even have access to that folder. Leah's throat tightened. Danielle turned to her, voice soft. You did the right thing. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to pull the air toward her again. Newhart folded her arms. You can say whatever you want, she muttered, but no real executive walks into a branch dressed like that. There it was, the line that crossed everything. The smirk, the tone, the small, invisible dagger of assumption. Danielle blinked once. When she opened her eyes again, the calm was still there, but colder. You think fabric defines credibility? She asked. You might want to review your training manual. Keene stepped between them. Enough, both of you. He turned to Danielle. Ma'am, please, this isn't helping your case. My case, Danielle's voice sharpened just enough to slice through his authority. You're talking to the woman finalizing your $7 billion merger, and right now I'm wondering if your culture deserves it. The words hit harder than a shout. The lobby seemed to inhale at once. Even the guard stopped pretending not to listen. Keene's mouth opened, then closed again. You're what, Danielle? Ross, she said simply. CEO, Ross Capital Holdings. Leah whispered it under her breath as if translating truth for the rest of the room. She's the one buying us. The silence that followed wasn't disbelief. It was revelation. Every face shifted at once, recalculating its posture, its politeness, its moral compass. Newhart's lips parted. You can't just walk in here, and I already did," Danielle interrupted. She turned her phone toward Keene. On the screen glowed a live call window. Maya Evans, executive assistant. Maya's voice came through the speaker, crisp, professional. "Miss Ross, I've logged the incident. The merger's under review. Board visibility confirmed." Danielle nodded once. "Thank you, Maya." Then she looked around the room. Her tone dropped lower, steadier. "For the record, I came here to observe how your employees treat everyday clients. You've shown me enough." Keene tried to recover authority. "Please, Miss Ross, this isn't reflective of our values. It's reflective of your reality," she cut in. "And reality has consequences." A nearby customer, an elderly man in a tan coat, whispered to his wife. "That's her, the CEO." She nodded slowly, still clutching her purse like a relic. Danielle turned toward the teller one last time. "You said I didn't belong here," she said. "But I built the table you're standing behind." The words landed heavy, deliberate. Newhart's throat bobbed as she tried to speak, but nothing came out. The monitor behind her flickered again, then logged her out. A soft chime rang through the lobby. "Access revoked, teller Newhart. Immediate suspension pending review." Gasps. Phones raised. Leah covered her mouth in shock. Danielle picked up her ID, sliding it calmly into her purse. "Next time you see a black woman in this lobby," she said, "don't assume she's lost. Assume she owns the room." She turned and walked away, heels clicking against marble, steady, final, resonant. Behind her, the security guard lowered his gaze. Leah whispered almost to herself, "That's what power looks like." And for the first time that morning, the bank was truly quiet, not peaceful but humbled. For a full 10 seconds, the lobby didn't move. It was the kind of silence that follows lightning, the space between disbelief and consequence. The security guard was the first to blink. He stepped forward halfway, then stopped, unsure which side of power he stood on now. His radio hissed with static, but no voice came through. Nobody wanted to be the one to speak first. At the counter, teller Newhart's hands hovered above the keyboard as if typing could rewind time. The screen in front of her pulsed red again, access revoked. Her lips parted, searching for a reason, an escape, anything that could undo what everyone had just seen. Leah was still standing. Her eyes flicked between Danielle's retreating figure and her frozen co-workers. Every second that passed felt like history writing itself in real time. The manager, Keene, finally exhaled, his authority cracked down the middle. "All right, everyone, let's stay calm," he stammered. "This doesn't mean anything yet. We just need to clarify." Leah turned toward him. "She said she's the CEO. She claimed to be Keene," corrected quickly, voice trembling on the word. Leah's tone sharpened, quiet but insistent. "Then why did her override work?" No one answered. Keene swallowed hard, eyes darting to the surveillance cameras perched above the teller stations. He knew corporate was already watching. Somewhere in a boardroom hundreds of miles away, compliance officers were rewinding footage, logging every word, every gesture. Newhart pressed the intercom button, desperate. "Corporate line, please. I need verification on a client impersonation." The system beeped 3 times and cut her off. A new message flashed across her monitor, "Case escalated, report filed by executive division." The color drained from her face. From the back of the room, a murmur began, customers whispering, phones recording. One woman in a navy blazer whispered, "That's going viral in an hour." Keene adjusted his tie, sweat glinting near his temple. "Everyone off their phones," he ordered. This isn't a spectacle, but it already was. Leah's phone buzzed in her pocket. She slipped it out discreetly. On screen, Ross Capital Holdings internal memo. Her heart raced as she read the first line. Effective immediately, Hamilton First Bank merger placed under executive suspension pending ethics audit. She looked up. "Sir," she said softly, "they've halted the merger." Keene froze. "What?" "The whole deal," Leah repeated. "It's on hold." The teller staggered backward, her chair scraping loudly. "You can't pause something that big. She can't just..." Keene cut her off, voice hollow. "She can." For the first time, his words carried no power, just truth. Leah watched him crumble in silence. In the corner, the guard turned off his radio. The tension that had once belonged to Danielle was now devouring everyone else. Meanwhile, outside the glass doors, Danielle stood on the steps beneath the noon light. The city buzzed indifferently, cars, sirens, footsteps. She took a slow breath, phone still in her hand. "Maya," she said softly, "send the report to the board. Full transparency. I want every second of that interaction logged." "Already done," Maya's voice replied through the earpiece. "Would you like to proceed with media containment?" No, Danielle said. "Let them tell the story." The truth doesn't need editing. She slipped her phone into her bag and turned toward the busy street. Behind her through the glass, she could see the faces of a broken hierarchy watching her leave. One by one, the employees lowered their eyes. Even Newhart, who had stood tall minutes ago, now looked small, almost fragile. Danielle paused for just a breath, not to gloat, but to remember. Flashback 20 years earlier, a younger Danielle in a community bank in Atlanta holding her first paycheck. A teller refused to cash it without a manager's approval. She remembered standing there, humiliated, vowing quietly that one day she'd own a place like this, not to shame them, but to change what power looked like. Back to present, her expression softens not in forgiveness, but understanding. History doesn't repeat, she murmured, it reports. She steps off the marble stairs, merging into the crowd, disappearing like a calm storm. Inside, Keene slumped into a chair behind the counter. The hum of the servers, once ordinary, now sounded like a countdown. "Call corporate," he muttered. "Now." Newhart didn't move. Her screen lit up again, one final system message: termination review scheduled, 2:00 p.m. Leah glanced at her voice, quiet but firm. "You shouldn't have talked to her that way." Newhart looked up, eyes glassy. "I didn't know who she was." "That's the point," Leah replied. The camera pans out slowly, the vast cold lobby, the motionless employees, the faint echo of Danielle's footsteps fading into the distance. Justice had already left the building, but its reflection lingered on every polished surface she'd walked past. Bandernoy tort. Viet Tiep. For 2 hours later, the skyline of New York shimmered behind tinted glass. A long oval table stretched across the top floor of Ross Capital headquarters, the air heavy with the kind of quiet that only follows disruption. The boardroom was full, but no one spoke. On the massive screen at the far end, a paused video frame glowed a still shot of the Hamilton First Bank lobby. Frozen mid-scene, Danielle standing calm, the teller's face caught. Mid-sneer, Leah turned halfway toward the camera like a witness summoned by fate. Danielle sat at the head of the table, no papers, no laptop. Just her phone. Her gaze never left the screen. "Play it," she said simply. The footage rolled. Every sound, every insult, every flicker of bias played out in 4 Kelvin's clarity. The room filled with the low hum of air conditioning and the faint audio of humiliation. When the clip ended, the silence that followed was surgical. One of the directors, a man in a charcoal suit with decades of experience and a voice trained to smooth over scandals, finally cleared his throat. "Danielle, we all saw the live report. The question now is what's next. The bank's stock is dropping after word of the merger suspension." Danielle didn't answer immediately. She leaned back, eyes still on the screen. "They told me I didn't belong there," she said quietly. "In a building we were about to buy." The man adjusted his tie. "Yes, and the optics are terrible for them. But if we cancel outright, we'll lose leverage." "Optics," Danielle repeated. "That's the problem. Everyone manages appearances. No one manages behavior." Across the table, Maya, her executive assistant, tapped her tablet. "The public sentiment's already shifting," she said. Leah Tran's video is trending under number the 7B lesson. Thousands of comments. The clip's being used in diversity seminars by noon. Another board member, older, skeptical, leaned forward. "Do we capitalize on this or contain it?" Danielle's tone didn't rise, but the temperature in the room dropped anyway. "Neither. We let it speak for itself." She turned to Maya. "Draft a statement for the press. Keep it short." Maya nodded, fingers flying. "What do you want it to say?" Danielle thought for a moment. Then, with the same calm that had silenced a lobby, she said, "Respect is not a policy. It's a practice." Maya looked up. "That's it. That's enough." She stood walking toward the window. The city below was buzzing, oblivious to how close it had come to another kind of storm. Her reflection merged with the skyline in the glass. When power disrespects quietly, she said, it deserves to fall quietly too. Behind her, one of the board members spoke again, cautious. "We've been approached by journalists. They want to know if you'll release the entire video." "We won't," Danielle said. "Let them imagine the rest." Silence leaves a louder mark. Maya's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, then looked up. Hamilton First just issued an internal memo. The teller and manager were suspended pending full review. The CEO of their group wants to meet privately. Danielle smiled faintly. "They should have met me before the cameras did." The directors exchanged uneasy looks. None of them wanted to say what they were all thinking, that this moment, this public reckoning, would rewrite more than a merger. Danielle walked back to the table, resting her hands lightly on its polished surface. "We move forward," she said, "but not with them. Not yet." Maya hesitated. "You're really pulling the deal?" Pausing it, Danielle corrected. Until the bank rebuilds what it broke trust. Her voice softened. Money moves fast. Dignity moves slower. That's why it lasts. For the first time since the footage played, someone exhaled a long, quiet breath that carried a hint of respect. Danielle gathered her things, slipping her phone into her bag. As she reached the door, Maya called after her. "Ma'am, what should we tell their board when they ask why the deal's frozen?" Danielle paused at the threshold, half-turned eyes steady. "Tell them the merger didn't fail because of numbers," she said. "It failed because of tone." She stepped out into the hallway, heels echoing against marble once more, the same sound that had filled a bank lobby hours earlier now echoing through a higher floor where the real power lived. And as the boardroom door closed behind her, the screen flickered to black, leaving only one sentence in white: Integrity $7B and counting. Evening light spilled across the windows of Danielle's penthouse office, painting the walls in soft gold. The city outside hummed with the usual rhythm of ambition, car horns, footsteps, and distant sirens, but inside everything was still. Her phone vibrated once, then again. The display read, "Incoming call, Richard Hale, CEO, Hamilton First Bank." She stared at the name for a second longer than necessary, then answered. "Mr. Hale," she said, voice even. "Miss Ross," his tone was careful, the kind reserved for damage control. "I wanted to personally apologize for what happened today." Danielle didn't move from the window. "You're not apologizing to me," she said. "You're apologizing to your reflection. You just don't like what it showed you." A brief silence. "The kind that lives between truth and defense." "You're right," he admitted finally. "It was unacceptable. I'm aware the merger is suspended, but I'm hoping we can still hope is not a strategy," she interrupted. He hesitated. "Then tell me what it will take to rebuild trust." Danielle turned, walking slowly toward her desk. The skyline behind her looked like molten glass fading into night. "Start by rebuilding your culture," she said. "Every policy, every promotion, every meeting where the room looks the same." "We've already terminated the employees involved," Hale offered. "Swift action termination. Doesn't erase rot," she said. "It just hides the smell." Her words were quiet but surgical. Hale sighed, the sound heavy with the exhaustion of a man who'd built walls of numbers only to have them crumble under one video. "You're not wrong," he said, "but we're willing to make this right." The deal meant growth for both of us. Danielle's gaze hardened. "Growth means nothing if it's rooted in arrogance. My team has already rerouted the capital. We're investing in an equity fund for minority-owned startups. $7 billion now has a new direction." Hale's voice dropped. "You're diverting all of it, every dollar." He exhaled, sharply, disbelief mixing with fear. That's unprecedented." Danielle smiled faintly. So was the disrespect. A pause. The faint hum of the city filled the line. "You realize," he said slowly, "this will tank our valuation. Maybe it'll rebuild your reputation," she countered. "If you're lucky." Hale's voice softened, almost pleading now. "Danielle, I know what happened was wrong. But don't let one incident destroy what we've worked toward." She stopped, pacing, her heels quiet on the marble. "It wasn't one incident, Richard. It was a symptom. You just finally saw it happen to the wrong person." There was no anger in her tone, just gravity. The kind that makes people listen even when they want to argue. He tried again, weaker this time. "You're really walking away." "No," she said. "I'm redefining what walking away looks like." She looked out at the skyline once more. "Tomorrow morning my team will release a statement confirming the cancellation. But I'm not naming names. I'm not showing footage. I don't need to. Silence can teach too." Hale said nothing. The sound of his breath was uneven through the receiver. "Do you know what the most expensive sound in business is, Richard?" she asked. "What's that?" "The sound of dignity leaving the room." She ended the call before he could respond. Maya stepped into the office moments later, holding a folder. "Everything ready for the press?" "Yes," Danielle said. "Schedule it for sunrise. Any quote you want, highlighted." Danielle closed her eyes briefly, then nodded. "Use this, 'We withdrew the offer, not in anger, but in clarity.'" Maya smiled faintly. "That's going to hit hard." "It's not meant to hit," Danielle said. "It's meant to land." She turned off the lights, leaving only the glow of the skyline reflecting across the glass desk. The camera lingers as she walks toward the elevator, one woman, steady, unhurried, framed by the city she built from the same ground where she was once dismissed. The elevator doors slide open, swallowing the light. And in that brief, quiet moment before they close, the audience hears her final whisper. "Respect isn't earned when you get power. It's proven when you already have it." The doors shut. Cut to black. End of part 6. Morning. The city was already awake when the news broke. Across television networks, business headlines, and social media feeds, a single phrase rippled like an aftershock. Ross Capital withdraws $7B merger. CEO calls it a matter of principle. No anger, no scandal. Just principle. Every outlet replayed the same 7 seconds of silent footage. Danielle Ross walking out of the bank, calm, composed, eyes forward. The press had called it the walk that cost $7 billion. In the Ross Capital headquarters, the media floor buzzed with phones, analysts, and reporters trying to decode the quietest rebellion in Wall Street history. Maya was already there, coordinating the response team when Danielle stepped off the elevator. Her entrance cut through the noise like gravity re-entering a room. "Status?" Danielle asked. "The networks are calling you everything from reckless to revolutionary," Maya said. "But public support is massive. That intern Leah Tran, she's done 3 interviews. People love her courage." "Good," Danielle replied. "She earned that." Maya hesitated. "Hamilton First's board released a statement an hour ago. They're calling your decision disproportionate." Danielle raised an eyebrow. "They called bias policy. Now they call accountability disproportionate. Some patterns don't break, they just change vocabulary." The two women exchanged a glance, part frustration, part triumph. A young analyst approached, nervous but determined. "Miss Ross, we've tracked the stock movement. Our value jumped 8% overnight." "Because of outrage?" Danielle asked. "Because of respect," he said. For the first time that morning, she smiled. By noon, Danielle was due at an internal town hall meeting, a space meant for her entire company to hear directly from her. The auditorium was full. Over 1,000 employees seated in silence as the lights dimmed. When Danielle walked onto the stage, she didn't bring notes. She didn't need them. "I've been asked if pulling the deal was emotional," she began. "It wasn't. It was moral." Her voice filled the hall, calm, deliberate, each word measured like truth on a scale. "We're not in the business of making money at the expense of dignity. Not for our clients, not for our partners, and definitely not for ourselves." The crowd listened, unblinking. "I didn't cancel that merger because of a single teller's mistake," she continued. "I canceled it because silence had become their policy, and when silence protects arrogance, it becomes violence." A hush spread across the hall. "Some people will say I overreacted," Danielle said. "But let me ask you something. When was the last time you saw a black woman overestimated?" The words hit like a bell. Then applause, not loud but deep, steady, rising like thunder behind glass. She let it settle, then added softly, "I didn't raise my voice. I raised the standard." The applause swelled again, louder, freer this time. Maya watched from the side of the stage, her eyes glistening. She knew Danielle never spoke for applause. She spoke to build memory. When the clapping faded, Danielle glanced down for a moment, as if remembering something far older than the moment itself. "When I was 16, she said, a bank manager told me my name didn't sound like someone who could open an account. Today, I own one that could buy his. That's not revenge, that's history corrected." No one dared speak. "We can't control how people see us," she said, "but we can control how we respond. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Sometimes quiet is strategy. Sometimes quiet is power waiting to be seen." She stepped back, letting the silence breathe with her. Then, almost as an afterthought, she said, "This isn't about a merger, it's about a mirror. And I like what I see now." The room stood to its feet. Applause like rainfall waves of it rolling upward to the rafters, echoing through glass and steel. Danielle bowed her head slightly, then exited the stage without another word. The camera followed her through the backstage hallway, the sound dimming again until only her footsteps remained. Outside, journalists waited at the curb, microphones raised, voices overlapping. "Miss Ross, do you regret the decision? Will you ever reconsider the deal? Was this about race or respect?" She stopped for just one moment, turned slightly and said into the flashing lights, "Respect is race, and it's every race." Then she walked on, no security, no entourage, just the sound of composure carving its way through chaos. The news clip would later title that moment, "The Calm That Redefined Corporate Power." And as she disappeared into the waiting car, the reporter's mic caught her final whisper, barely audible but perfectly clear. "Power doesn't shout. It signs the check." By the time the applause from Danielle's town hall had faded, the collapse had already begun. Not at Ross Capital, but across town in the glass tower of Hamilton First Bank. On the 29th floor, panic didn't sound like screaming. It sounded like typing, frantic, overlapping, pointless. Dozens of executives hovered over glowing monitors as stock graphs bled red. Emails titled, "Urgent Reputational Damage Control," stacked up faster than anyone could open them. Richard Hale, the bank's CEO, stood by the window with his tie loosened and his phone pressed to his ear. Just tell me we can contain it, he said quietly. The PR director's voice trembled on the other end. We can't. The footage is everywhere. Hashtags, reaction videos, even brand audits calling us the bank that lost $7 billion in 7 minutes. Hale's reflection in the glass looked older than it had that morning. What about the teller terminated? She gave a statement claiming she was following protocol. It made things worse. He rubbed his temples, and the manager suspended indefinitely. Internal staff are leaking details. The union's distancing itself already. Hale turned away from the window. The boardroom behind him was chaos directors arguing in circles, words like optics, crisis, donor fallout bouncing off the marble. She didn't raise her voice, he muttered. That's what's killing us. She didn't have to. Someone slammed a folder on the table. Richard, we can't keep bleeding like this. We need a counter-statement. Something to make her look vindictive. Number Hale's tone snapped like a wire. She's not vindictive. She's right. The room went still. He dropped into his chair, exhaustion and realization mixing in his eyes. You all built a system that confuses confidence with character, and now we're paying the price. One of the directors scoffed. What do you suggest? A public confession. Something close, Hale said. He turned to his assistant. Draft a new statement. We're not defending ourselves, we're acknowledging the truth. The room erupted again, protests, fear, calculation. But Hale didn't move. For the first time he looked certain. This isn't a PR problem, he said. It's a mirror problem. Meanwhile, Leah Tran sat alone at a coffee shop downtown, phone buzzing non-stop with messages from strangers. Thank you for speaking up. You gave me courage. My boss needs to see this. She scrolled through them quietly, overwhelmed. A barista approached. You're that intern, right? From the video. Leah nodded shyly. Free drink, the barista said, sliding her a cup with a small smile. For saying what everyone else was afraid to. Leah laughed softly, the kind of laugh that carries relief more than joy. She didn't know it yet, but by that evening 3 Fortune 500 companies would offer her jobs, all citing integrity under pressure. Across the skyline, the two buildings, Ross Capital and Hamilton, first gleamed under the same fading Sunday, one growing brighter, the other dimming by the hour. Inside her office, Danielle watched the headlines from a distance. She wasn't celebrating. She was studying the way a surgeon studies a scar after removing what caused it. Collapse, she whispered, isn't always destruction. Sometimes it's correction. Her reflection in the glass looked calm, unwavering. Maya entered quietly. Hamilton's CEO just released a public apology, she said. He admitted the failure was systemic. Danielle nodded once. Then maybe they'll finally learn the value of silence used right. She turned off the monitor. Outside the city, lights flickered not as chaos this time, but as clarity. And somewhere between those towers, the sound of justice still echoed, steady, soft, and undeniable. Night draped over the city like a curtain, quiet and deliberate. Ross Capital's headquarters stood illuminated against the skyline, its logo glowing faintly. Not loud, not boastful, just present. Inside, Danielle sat alone in her office, the chaos of the day finally settling into silence. The desk before her was clear except for a single envelope, cream paper, embossed seal, Hamilton First Bank, statement of accountability. She hadn't opened it yet. She didn't need to. Some truths don't require reading, only witnessing. Across the room, the city lights shimmered through floor-to-ceiling glass. They reflected in her eyes like constellations built from consequence. Her phone buzzed once. It was Maya. It's out, Maya said over the line. The public apology, the press conference, everything. They admitted fault. No excuses. And the reaction, Danielle asked. Respect. Real respect. Even their employees are calling it a reset. Danielle smiled faintly, gaze still fixed on the skyline. Then it was worth it. Maya hesitated before speaking again. The world's calling you the quiet storm. Some say you killed a $7 billion deal just to make a point. They're wrong, Danielle said softly. I saved a point from being lost in $7 billion noise. A pause. The kind that doesn't end a conversation but defines it. You did more than that, Maya said. You gave people language for dignity. That was always the goal, Danielle replied. Money changes hands. Power changes rooms. But dignity that changes generations. She ended the call, gently letting the quiet reclaim the room. Moments later, she rose from her chair and walked to the window. The reflection staring back wasn't just hers anymore. It carried the faces of those who'd watched, those who'd remembered being dismissed, those who'd felt invisible until now. Her voice came low, almost a whisper, but certain they thought silence was weakness. It was preparation. The city outside seemed to slow every light a heartbeat in the distance. She picked up the envelope, tore it open carefully, and scanned the first line. We Hamilton First Bank acknowledge that discrimination, implicit or otherwise, is not just an error of individuals but a failure of systems. We vow to rebuild both. Danielle closed the letter, folded it neatly, and placed it inside a drawer. Good, she murmured. Let them rebuild. Her phone buzzed again, a new message notification. It was from Leah. A photo. The image showed Leah standing beside the same bank counter, now empty, her employee badge replaced with a new one. Ross Capital Ethics Division. Danielle's smile widened, quiet and proud. She typed back, "You earned this? Never forget who changed the room first, you." Leah's reply came seconds later. "You gave me permission to stay standing." Danielle locked her screen and looked out once more. "That's all leadership is," she whispered. "Permission." The camera drifted outward through the glass, rising slowly above the city. Her voice followed, steady and final. "I didn't raise my voice. I raised the standard. And in the end, respect wasn't lost, it was taught." The frame lingered on her reflection, half shadow, half light, before fading into black. On screen, one last line appeared in white. "Dignity doesn't demand attention. It earns it." Fade out. Silence.